I'm Michael Modzelewski, naturalist for Princess Cruises. Been working with them here in Alaska for, I believe this is my 14th summer. And it's not a job, it's an adventure. And I feel guilty for getting paid to live my passion. Tracy Fjord, by the Alaskans that live here, is considered to be a hidden treasure. Other places like Glacier Bay kind of get all the publicity, and rightly so. It's a beautiful national park. But Tracy Arm is sort of a hidden jewel for those in the know. In fact, Native Alaskans consider Tracy Arm Fjord to be the most beautiful, wildest, and most intense place in Alaska. Because it's 26 miles long, and when we take the cruise ship in, you never see more than one turn at a time. So it slowly reveals its magic. You've got hanging gardens, greenery, all the way to the summits, sort of Hawaii green. And in July, we have wildflowers blooming, splashes of color up the rock walls, pollinated by hummingbirds. If you told somebody you could see hummingbirds and sapphire blue icebergs in the same place, they would call you crazy. But that's some of the magic that we experience in the fjord. The fjord has been visited by many, many people, including the natives, who for centuries, 3-4 centuries back, would go into the fjord to enjoy the scenic beauty, to harvest the kelp off of the tidal flats. Tracy Arm is named for Benjamin Tracy, Secretary of the U.S. Navy from 1889 to 1893. It's called an arm because that is the overall shape of the fjord, especially from the air. Tracy Arm Fjord is considered by many people to be the most scenic and intense place in all of Alaska. It is less than half a mile wide from one rock wall across to the other. As we're seeing, we've got towering cliffs soaring straight up out of the ocean, 4,000 feet tall. There are many adjectives to describe this fjord, with steep and deep certainly applying. Steep, the mountain walls above us, and deep, the ocean beneath us. All the grooves and striations in that solid rock cliff, the way it's been scarred and marred, sliced and diced, that was all done by ice, even up near the tops of these mountains. You know, this is difficult to wrap our minds around, but 15,000 years ago, during the last ice age, glaciers up to 1 mile thick blanketed the inside passage of Alaska, carved out this incredible scenery. The very first European explorers, Captain Vancouver, Captain Cook's ships of discovery, came into these coastal fjords of Alaska 3 centuries ago. The early European explorers were shocked. For many places like Tracy Arm, their long lines never touched the bottom. So on the first marine charts, the early explorers penciled in NB, no bottom. You know, we actually have 1,000 feet of ocean directly beneath us and right up against these mountain walls. When I first heard they were bringing a cruise ship this size about 10 years ago, was actually this ship, the Star Princess, that pioneered the very first time taking a grand class cruise ship into Tracy Arm. I was a skeptic, and I said, no way. You might be able to go in, but where are you going to turn a ship that's 3 football fields long? How are you going to turn it around in that narrow passageway? You'll get stuck. And it's almost as if we do get stuck. I mean, we just miss by about 100 yards off the bow and stern when the captain swings the ship completely around. So it's a magical experience. And many people that have been to the other glaciers and national parks in Alaska, and after they visit Tracy Arm, I say, okay, which is your favorite? And I'm really shocked, 90% say that Tracy Arm is at the top of their list now. Because it's all about the journey of each twist and turn rather than just the destination of going up to see the ice. You enjoy the whole experience in a fjord like this. A lot of people have that feeling that the tranquility and the majesty and beauty of this place, it affects them at a spiritual level. South Sawyer Glacier. And that is the sculptor. That glacier, 15,000 years ago, moved 26 miles forward through this canyon and carved out this fjord. Retreated back about 1,000 years ago, present position. So we are looking at the ice that did all the work in here to carve out this channel. 21 miles long, solid river of ice, and it is 1,000 feet thick. The ice is about midway up mile 11. Where the ice comes down to the ocean, from the water line to the top icy spires, 250 feet tall. The Tongass National Forest here covers 17 million acres and 500 miles of Alaska's southeastern coastline. Tongass National Forest was created in 1907 by President Theodore Roosevelt and named after a local clan of Tlingit Native people. But this forest around us today actually contains the greatest biomass on Earth. The Amazon contains the greatest diversity of plants, but Alaska's rainforests have the greatest density of plants. More concentration here of living organisms per square foot than in a tropical forest. Grizzly bear habitat, and the Tongass holds the world's densest population of bald eagles. You know, even though we are in Tongass National Forest, Tracy Arm Fjord itself is not a national park. No permits are required to enter this fantastic wild fjord. In 1867, it was William H. Seward, U.S. Secretary of State, who championed the cause of purchasing Alaska from Russia. The consensus American opinion then, 1867, about the purchase was don't do it. What are we going to do with a useless hunk of ice? In fact, the purchase of Alaska from Russia only passed by 2 votes in the U.S. Senate. So in 1867, the United States paid only $7.2 million, less than 2 cents an acre, for Alaska, acquiring 600,000 square miles of scenic paradise. Maybe the greatest bargain the United States government has ever been involved in. Parallel to Tracy Fjord, just on the other side of a mountain range, is another fjord. We call it the twin sister to Tracy Fjord, and it's called Endicott Fjord. It shares the same overall wilderness area with Tracy Arm. Endicott Arm isn't quite as narrow. It's not quite as dramatic in the twists and turns. You don't get quite as close to the vertical cliffs as you do at Tracy Arm Fjord, just over the mountain range. But what Endicott Arm has that Tracy Arm doesn't have is once you get into the end of Endicott Arm, the glacier is wide open before you. 2 types of glaciers in Alaska. We have hanging glaciers that are hanging or plastered up high on the mountainsides, and they never reach the ocean. They only come about halfway down the mountains, and then the leading face stops. And then off the leading face of that crenulated, wrinkled mass of ice, the hanging glaciers produce waterfalls. Tidewater glaciers come all the way down the mountains, and they do reach the tides or the ocean. And that's where the icebergs are born. Endicott Arm, the passageway isn't as dramatic and narrow, but the payoff is greater at the end because you get a much wider view, an open view of Dawes Glacier, and you can get much closer. Pieces of ice that are as big as houses will crack or calve off the face of the glacier, crash into the sea. What people remember even most is the sound. The natives call it white thunder. Something that's very unusual, and you can go a whole lifetime up here in Alaska, glacier viewing, and you never see it in your whole life. And it's what we saw today. There are shooter icebergs. As high as the ice is above the water, it also extends that far under the water. And the glacier, the front of the glacier, anchors an icy foot to an alluvial crushed rock bed that the ice anchors like a big foot down there. Well, salt water at the glacier face is very corrosive, and it constantly chews away at the ice at the glacier below the water line. So once in a great while, a huge mass of ice will break loose from the bottom of the glacier underwater and come shooting up to the surface. It's almost as if you couldn't believe what your eyes were seeing. That's how spectacular and how rare those shooter icebergs are, cracking off the bottom of the glacier. So you can never, life doesn't give you everything in one place, and it's true in the fjord lands of Alaska. Tracy Arm gives you the narrowness, the drama, the close cliffs. The sister twin fjord, Endicott Arm, it's a little bit wider, not quite as dramatic, but you can get much closer to the glacier at the end of Endicott Arm, and to see what we saw today with calving from above, shooter icebergs from below. Life doesn't get any better than that.